Welcome to today's edition of Mental Health Matters. Today I have Andrea Duran on the show. We're going to talk about ADHD and some more mental health diagnosis. Get you something to drink and get you a snack and come on back. Good morning, Andrea. How you doing?
Good, and you?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited about doing this show with you. Um,
Same.
I haven't saw you in a while, and it was good to kind of connect with you over the phone. So I'm glad you took the time out to just kind of, share your story with ADHD and your background in general. So I know it's going to be a good show. What you been up to?
Just working. I'm in the construction industry, and I'm building a bomb-proof building from the ground up.
Okay,
So, a
nice.
lot of stress.
I know. Well, let's talk a little bit more about your background. We know you, Andrea Duran. We know you do construction. Tell the viewers a little bit more about yourself.
My name's Andrea. I'm 40 years old. I was originally born in Utah, moved out to California about 12 years old. After that, after 9/11 happened, I went into the military, was a combat medic in the military for 8 years in total, and got out, and then started to try to figure out what it is and where I want to go from there in life. And kind of gone through so many different careers and avenues to find where I really fit in and where my niche is.
Yeah.
Um, and ADHD kind of plays a role in that because it's like you want to go everywhere and do everything. So yeah, it's
Wow.
interesting.
Yeah, I did not know you were born in Utah. How was that?
Very interesting. You know, back in the 80s and stuff, there wasn't too much of a cultural demographic. And
Yeah,
so being one of four students in the whole entire school that was not white
yeah,
completely, it was very interesting. And, my mother was also young, a single parent, widowed. So, you get lots of looks. My mom was white, but she dated uh, different ethnic groups. And so we definitely got a lot of looks and things. And so there was you grow up with a lot of, you don't fit in anywhere. So it's
yeah.
like you get that prejudice and, down people looking down on you and stuff. So you have to always rise above.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that because I was talking to someone yesterday who is mixed with Chinese and white. And he was sharing a story with me how he was really bullied in a strong way growing up because he looked more Chinese than white. And he
Hmm.
was saying how he was bullied and, people always made fun of him. And it, bothered his mental health. He has like, deal with depression and other things with that. And he was telling me how, would go into really deep depression because the bullying as a kid. I guess from what he says that, there was not a lot of resources. Back then, he started to have behaviors, and his mom and dad couldn't figure out where the behavior was coming from because he was scared to tell his parents that he was being bullied because he didn't want to move because I guess he was in like the military. Well, here's one of his parents. His dad was in the military, and he didn't want to, move from, place to place. He just wanted, somewhere that he can just, sort of just, keep the same friends and different things like that. And so when they learned that he got bullied, when they learned he was getting bullied, they did, eventually take action stuff. And he also dealt with ADHD as well. So I thought that was very interesting, that he dealt with all of those type of things and stuff. So
Yeah, I grew up fighting quite a bit
yeah,
and getting into fights and stuff when I was younger. The Hispanic culture didn't accept me because I didn't speak Spanish because I was raised white. And the
yeah,
white side didn't accept me because my skin was darker. And, back in the day, people don't realize like you couldn't check multiple boxes like you
right,
can today of your race and ethnicity. And back then it was one or the other. And so even when my mom would have to fill out those boxes or I would, I would always try to check too. And they're like, you can't. And I'm like, well, I'm two, and they're like,
yeah,
well, you look more Hispanic. You have to check that box. And
wow,
it's like, it was always like, well, what does she look more like, white or Hispanic?
yeah,
And so, you grow up like that and then you're not kind of accepted in either group. And it's just, you grow up fighting. Like he
yeah,
got bullied, and I grew up fighting to defend myself. And, you know, it was just interesting. So I had to fight in life. I grew up always pushing.
yeah,
So,
yeah. That you guys have a very, very, very similar story. Um, yeah, I think that's, I mean, that's so bad that it's too bad that people, I hear people say that kids are like the worstest critics, because they could be
mhm.
mean.
Yeah,
As adults, we kind of grow out of it a little bit, but kids, they have no conscious. I don't believe they have a full conscious or full understanding of the things that they do, how it really impacts a person's life or mental health. You know,
exactly.
so yeah, but you rose above that. So you said you joined the military after 911. What branch did you serve and why?
I served,
Go ahead. I'm
oh,
sorry.
sorry. I
No, go
served in
ahead.
the Air Force.
Air Force. Okay. What made you join the Air Force? I think I think she's paused. What does it mean? Oh, does it mean Max?
Okay, we're back on.
Okay, I thought it was me. So Andrea, what made you join the Air Force?
Um, you know, I was, wild teen, rebellious, all of that. And, I wasn't sure where my life was going. I don't think even my family knew where my life was going. And I think they feared for the worst. And then 9/11 had happened. And my friends and I, we had like made a pact, like, oh, yeah, let's all join together. So, we were looking at the different branches and whatnot. They ended up bailing and never joining, of course. And so I stuck with it. I went in. Wasn't I didn't really have direction, and the direction my family wanted me to go into, it didn't align with me. It wasn't anything I wanted to do.
Yeah,
um, they had hopes for me to go in to be a lawyer and eventually into politics, and I was just like, oh my gosh, no.
yeah,
But so I joined. It gave me the direction and structure that like I'd always been wanting, I guess.
yeah,
Being raised by a single parent, you know, there isn't a lot of time, structure, everything like that, because they're always, busy trying to provide and make sure you
right,
have a good life. And so, you kind of ended, and even back then in my generation, when you grew up, you're already a latch and key kid.
right.
You were always by yourself. You're fine by yourself. And so, you know, I kind of missed that direction portion in life. And so it gave me that. And I went in and like I excelled. And so it gave me that structure. And it did help with the ADHD. It helped me navigate how to really like line stuff up and get stuff done.
Yeah,
And so it just helped all around in a lot of ways. But it created some issues because I joined at the height of the war. So,
yeah,
you don't get out unscathed, that's for sure.
yeah, yeah. How long were you in there?
I did 4 active and 4 reserve.
Wow, I did not know that. Wow. So was it challenging, being in the military as a female with ADHD, or it was just kind of normal?
Yeah, So growing up, schools weren't involved like they are today. There was no like, oh, we think something's wrong with your kid. Let's get them tested for ADHD. No, I was always eccentric. So they would just
Mhm.
make special comedies for me and stuff. Oh, we'll just have her stay after class to get work done and whatnot. And they nurtured me in that sense. But when I got in the military, yeah, it was hard because you still have ADHD. I
Right,
was undiagnosed my whole entire life.
right,
And so you get in and you get this structure, this organization. And as you're in, you have your main job and then you have a bunch of extra duties. Well, I had an abundant of extra duties. And so sometimes it was hard to always keep up on everything. I'd fall behind on certain things. And, you know, my biggest thing was always like getting like the paperwork portion of stuff done, is
yeah,
because it was just kind of like that wasn't the most important thing, but it was in a sense, but it wasn't the most. So those things always fell behind because I'd always forget to do them or prioritize them. And so, I get in trouble a little bit here and there
yeah,
for things I would forget to do.
yeah,
And so, your whole life you hear, oh, you have so much potential, so much potential. And you're like, well, why can't I be it? Like, what's
yeah,
wrong with me? Like, I
yeah,
don't understand. Because, mind you, I'm undiagnosed this whole time,
yeah,
not knowing what the heck's going on. I'm like, do I have a learning disability? Like, what is wrong with me?
yeah,
And you get down on yourself because
yeah,
we are our worst critics. And so no matter how much somebody tells us, we're messing up, doing right, whatever, we are 100 times harder on ourselves because we
right,
internalize them, see and go, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me?
right,
Like, pull it together, girl.
right, right, right. Well, I can speak to the fact that I know you personally, and I know that you are extremely intelligent. I know that we did used to work together. And I know that when you were hired, you came in the program and you cleaned a lot of stuff up, like a lot of stuff up. Like you was just boom, 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 like you was on it. But then I noticed that somewhere through the process, I think your ADHD started to kick in. And I wasn't aware of that. You didn't share a lot of that. But then as time went on, you started to share, and it made sense to me. And to be honest with you, Andrea, you was probably like one of the first persons that I knew or that I know that have ADHD. And just because we work together, um, it made me have my first hand experience with somebody who has it. So I was able to learn a lot from you, to be honest with you, about this. You know what I'm saying? And it put me
Yeah.
in a position to be able to like really understand you. Cause at first I'm like, man, like this, I thought you always been smart. That's a given, no matter what was going on. Even with that, intelligent, like you just on top of things. But then when things start happening, you made me understand that, this is what's going on with me now at this present time. And so from that situation, um, I actually, start to pay attention to other people who may have been undiagnosed, but knowing some of the same symptoms or pattern that's coupled with that. So I learned a lot
Right.
from you with this too.
Oh, thank you. Kind of blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
well, I think one thing people don't realize, like with ADHD, is they're always like, well, what happened? Like you came in, you were just guns blazing, getting stuff done, done, done.
Yeah.
And then what happened? You hit this like plateau and you're just kind of like, eh. And
Yeah.
it is. And so, ADHD, it's it is a mental disorder. It
Yeah.
can have attached a lot of different things. We can get depressed because we don't understand why we
Mhm.
can't reach our full potential, let alone maintain that energy, that drive. Yeah,
Yeah.
when something comes along and it's brand new, yeah, we're guns blazing. We're on
Yeah.
it. And if there's a crisis, we're great responders to it
Hmm.
in senses of urgencies, because our brains can operate that fast.
Right.
And the fact that when things kind of start slowing down and kind of just go with the daily flow, that's when we struggle the hardest. is
Yeah.
because we don't know what to do with all this excess energy.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, things start falling behind, things start slipping. We're struggling to juggle just some of the basic things because we kind of feel lost. We're like, all right, like,
Yeah.
I'm not stimulated enough. And
Right.
we can also get overly stimulated as well to where we just crash and burn
Right.
and we freeze and we're just like, I don't know where to begin. And we kind of have to reset ourselves and have that pep talk of like, all right, what do we need to do? And, the biggest key and thing that has helped me, even in my military career and jobs, life in general, is people with ADHD. And this is a thing that they don't realize of how much this sucks sometimes, is we have to, like at work, you'll make a list of all the things you need to get done in a day,
Right.
right? Just in your job. ADHD people, we have to do that our entire day from morning to wake to from waking up to going to bed.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have to plan everything. We have to plan, we have to think ahead of what we want to wear because too many decisions in our closet and we're never going to get dressed. We're going to run late. We have to plan how long does it take to drive? What time do I need to jump in the shower?
Yeah.
Do I have time to eat? Can I have coffee? We have to plan every second of our day like this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're all over the place.
Yeah.
And so it's not even just with making lists at work and prioritizing that work and continue it on to the next day. We have to do that in our aspects of our lives to the fullest.
Yeah.
And, when, things occur like traffic or an accident or things that are unforeseen or a scheduled change, it can throw us in a full whirlwind
Uh-huh.
because we had our day mapped out. And now you're just through this small, small little wrench and we're like, we don't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's, our whole life is spent pivoting. And
Yeah.
it sucks to have to account for your full day. You don't get to just be like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do today, kind of easy breezy. I'm just going to do whatever. We don't have that option.
Yeah.
Even when we go out with our friends, okay, I can rest until this time. I got to take a shower by this time. It takes me this long to get ready. Okay, I'll be ready by this time. We have to map out every aspect of our life,
Yeah.
and it's draining. So we
Yeah.
get overly stimulated quite easily to where we end up becoming kind of reclusive.
Yeah.
And, and people are like, oh, what's wrong? And another misconception is like people see people with ADHD as extremely extroverted. Oh, you're such an extrovert. And I'm like, no,
Uh-huh.
not really.
Yeah.
That's just my ADHD. But, we tend to be more reserved because we wonder if we're going to say too much, do too much,
Yeah.
be too much. We're all over the place,
Yeah.
just even in conversation. So it can be difficult and challenging sometimes to let alone slow ourselves down.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you shared what you just shared because, I think a lot of people, a matter of fact, I ain't gonna say think, I know there are a lot of people who may not understand what ADHD is. And, for me, I think it's important that people have some form of training or education or take some classes, not just with ADHD, but other things, whether it's depression, bipolar, whatever, because it's important. I know what a lot of employers, meaning supervisors and managers, who may not have a mental health background or who may not have been exposed to ADHD or other, mental health, diagnoses, they don't understand. So when someone who may be as smart as you, as bright as you, start performing on a high level, and then stuff start to slowly but surely change, I feel like it's important for them to understand what it is so they can properly know how to support people, in that situation, and properly know how to assist them. And why do you think what I'm saying is important?
I mean, it is important
Yeah.
because just like anyone, you want your employees, you want people under you to be performing at optimization. And, yeah, we can't be on at all times. We're
Yeah.
human. But being able to help someone reset and get back in the game is
Yeah.
important because, you know, yeah, we all have personal lives and things going on, but even people with ADHD, yeah, they can have stuff going on. But the thing is sometimes we get bored easily. We
Yeah,
get bored with a lot of things. Our mind will just daydream a lot, or, especially with routines,
yeah,
doing repetitive work. So sometimes when they're like that, it is important to know what you're looking at, what you're dealing with, and offer like, hey, do you want to mix things up for a minute,
right. Hmm.
because that does help reset them. It's something new. It's something stimulating to their brain that's going to challenge them in a good way,
Yeah,
rather than, kind of knocking them and being like, hey, what's going on? Your performance isn't, you know, what it was.
yeah,
And, people are embarrassed to say,
yeah,
like, I have a disability,
yeah,
and no one wants to say they want accommodations from. I know I don't. It
yeah,
sucks. I hate having to say, like, hey, I'm, ADHD, and
right.
I'm kind of in my plateau right now. I'm sorry. It sucks to have to say, I have a disability.
Yeah,
There is a portion of me that, is broken, or you feel like you're broken. You don't want to be that broken person, because when you're good, you're good.
yeah,
And so when things kind of become challenging for you in an aspect, it's just like you don't want to admit that,
yeah,
hey, I have this part of me that kind
yeah,
of just, either it can go in a lot of different directions, because it is ADHD. It's like having a bunch of ducklings. Some are in line, some are over there, and some thinks it's a dog.
yeah, yeah,
It's like, even having conversations with people, you end up like sometimes blanking out, or they'll say a certain word, and then you're thinking of a song that goes with that
right.
word. And you're just like all over the place, and you have to refocus yourself and be like, all right, what are they saying? Get
Yeah,
zoned back in.
yeah. You know, Andrea, the more I'm listening at you and stuff, I know for a fact I do have a family member that has ADHD but has been undiagnosed. And I remember I'm trying to be careful so I don't expose this person, but I remember it was very hard for this individual to focus. It was so hard for them to focus. They would get focused for like 10 or 15 minutes, and then they would have to get up or move on to something else. Like in the family, they couldn't understand. They could not make sense of that. So of
Right.
course, in the African American culture, at least with my family, it was kind of like they kind of forced this individual, get back in there and do this or do that, especially when it came to homework.
Oh yeah.
They just couldn't focus. And now, me looking back, at that situation, I feel bad for that individual because, and the parents too, because they didn't feel the need to take this individual to the doctor to get some help or to get diagnosed. And if so, they probably would have been in a much better space than they are now. Because once again, like you said, nobody wants to feel like they have a diagnosis, at least with the parents. Oh my God, my
Yeah.
child, and they're worried about what their friends are saying, and making it more so about them, and instead of getting the child some help.
Right. You know, with when you're a kid growing up, I mean, yeah, you're constantly getting yelled at. Why can't
Yeah.
you stay on task? I told you, I reminded you 20 times, like,
Right,
listen to me. And, and back in our generations, they literally did not test for this. They just
right,
said, oh, they just need a little extra support. And that
yeah,
was about it. And so the hardest thing for me is when I got out of active duty, I was going back to school, and I had to swallow the pill of like, hey, there's something wrong with me. Why can't I meet my potential? And I had to take that into my own hands, because
right,
obviously I fell through the cracks of the system between doctors and school and everything. And
right,
I was like, what's wrong with me? So I got myself tested for a learning disability,
yeah,
because I was like, something's wrong. Why can't I meet my potential?
right,
And I did the whole test, and they go, you don't have a learning disability. You're highly intelligent, actually. Your IQ is off the chart, but you are ADHD. And I'm like,
yeah,
oh. And, the best way it was ever explained to me, and for anyone to understand, you know, being smart and also having ADHD, it's like having a Ferrari brain with bicycle brakes. Like it's hard to slow it down and control it. And, even once I was older and sought out medications or something to help me get control of the ADHD, because there's only so many coping skills, but if you can't focus, those coping skills aren't going to work.
Right.
And, you know, doctors today with all the opioid addiction and issues, they don't want to prescribe the actual med that is needed for it,
Yeah.
Ritalin and Adderall, because they're highly addictive and people do abuse them. And so then they end up trying to put you on an antidepressant, one and all antidepressant that covers a bunch of different uh, disorders and things like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm not depressed. And so, and it ended up making things worse for me. So I was like, okay, I can't go this route. And, for us, caffeine works great. Like we will drink
Uh-huh.
so much caffeine in a day to help slow us down. Like we can drink it and go right to bed.
Yeah.
And so, for myself, like getting treatment through doctors and stuff, it hasn't been successful. They
Yeah.
won't put you on the meds
Yeah.
because they have addictive traits. And so I have to take a bunch of natural herbs and things like that. Uh, Ginseng, caffeine like type herbs. I even take like that alpha brain stuff, and that seems to help a lot. And it's
Yeah.
just like you have to really kind of take charge of your stuff. And when you notice you're kind of woo everywhere.
Yeah.
You kind of have to be like, all right, I have to slow down and take a break, go outside, and work
Right.
also doesn't like that because you're taking more breaks because your
Yeah.
mind's everywhere and
Yeah.
you're getting overloaded and you're trying to compartmentalize everything, but you need to step away from the situation in order to do that. So it's also hard for jobs to understand, like, why are you taking so many breaks? And you're like, ah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to refocus myself because right now my ducklings are running off.
Yeah. That's why I think it's important that, employers um get trained or educated on mental health all across the board. Because the way
Yes.
that I look at it, you don't need to have a diagnosis, but at some point in our lives, there are events that happen that will send our mind in some form of spiral, whether it's a divorce, whether it's a
Yep.
death of a loved one, whether you lose your job, whether it's a car accident. There are things that happen in our lives that causes us to be mentally affected. You may be depressed about
Absolutely.
a situation. You have a panic attack or an anxiety. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's important because for those who are not trained in these areas, I don't feel, especially if you're in a management position or law enforcement or whatever, you can't properly assist a person when the diagnosis start to take over.
Mhm.
Because people cannot really help the way that they feel. They can't control these symptoms,
Absolutely.
and so if you're not educated in that area as, managers or superiors or folks that are in a place of authority, you start to operate in a space that's not helpful for that individual because if an individual is not able to perform, it's not that they don't want to do their job. It's not that they don't want to perform. This situation is causing them not to be able to do their job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because like we're not in the driver's seat
Right,
and we're trying to get back in the driver's seat to
right,
get back control over and work through our stuff. And it is like, and like I said, we don't want to come to you and be like, hey, I'm really struggling. I'm going
right.
through stuff because we're not supposed to bring our outside life into our work life and
Hmm.
vice versa. But
Yeah,
they do. They cross lines, they cross areas.
right,
And sometimes we need that support system even from our jobs, especially our superiors, to kind of help us like, all right, we're going to get through this. I know what you're capable of. I know the kind of work you can put out. I get you're going through, like you're
right,
kind of off right now, but well, let me know how I can support you in this. If you need like, more breaks, or if you need me to change stuff
right.
up for you for a minute,
Hmm.
let's do that. So we
Hmm.
can get you back on your game and make at least this place a good place for you to be in.
Exactly. I know that I'm not going to name this place, but I work for an organization where, some of the staff were, struggling with different mental health situations. And my direct supervisor, the person that was over me, they had no sympathy. They had no, they had no, it was just, they didn't care. It was
Yeah.
like, they didn't care. They need to get the work done and blah, blah, blah. And so I was forced, to make decisions that I wouldn't necessarily made if it was just up to me, because they wasn't really understanding that the person was going through stuff. But
Yeah.
I thought what was interesting was this same individual who was, my supervisor, their 1 year anniversary or 2 year anniversary of the death of their family member,
Right.
they will always get depressed during that time and so forth. But
Right.
they got the support they needed from the agency during that time. And I brought this up to this individual one day too, and so I didn't like that, because to me it was unfair treatment. When this individual was going through their little thing, they got support. So why can't we support our, my team, the people under me, when they go through their thing, and so
Right.
this is why I feel like it's important that people in general, in the workplace, law enforcement, whoever, I think, mental health training should be a required onboarding
Absolutely.
training. I really believe that.
Absolutely. I mean, that little bit of knowledge could change the whole dynamic in a workplace.
Yeah,
Um, you know, a lot of times people aren't asking for full accommodation.
right,
They're not. They're not asking because they don't want to be weak. They don't want to
right,
need them. To them, it's also a crutch. They
yeah,
don't want to be seen like that.
right,
And so, it sometimes we just need people just need a little understanding to be like, all right, let me help reset you. Let's help make this a place that you can get away and, still do your job, still, because no one wants to live their life on disability. No one
right,
wants, everyone wants to work. We want to have a fulfilled life. And it's hard when you're struggling with things at times and you're just needing a little bit of a break, but yet you don't want to have to go on FMLA to get the break you need and the understanding,
right,
because like that ends up being your only option. Oh, you got to go on FMLA. And it's like, if they could just be a little understanding, you know, help with the dynamic and providing that safe place, they'll optimize again. They'll pop right back up and know, okay, here I'm good.
right, right,
And but it's yeah, you're right. It is very contradicting or double-edged sword when someone shows lack of empathy for
right,
other individuals and yet expects everyone else to walk on eggshells and accommodate them
mm-hmm,
because they're going through something.
mm-hmm,
Like, you know, there's that saying, like you leave home life at home and work life at work, but they do blur. You can't control it, period.
right,
It's there are going to be moments where it does blur.
yes,
And whether people are capable of truly having empathy and sympathy, fake it till you make it. Have a little empathy for people and be
yeah,
like, hey, look, I know this is going on. How can I support you?
mm-hmm,
Let's figure something out. Anything,
yeah,
even if it's just one little thing.
mm-hmm,
It does go a long way. It helps reset you.
yeah, yeah.
It really does help reset you to where you can come out of it and start optimizing again.
I 100% believe that. Because I once again think about the family member. When this person were permitted to step away for a little bit and then go back to do homework, you can tell it was like totally different. They was
Hmm.
definitely more focused, able to do what they needed to do. But there was times where they had to take more breaks than somebody who may not have ADHD,
Right.
you know.
And what's funny is like it's a balancing act for you guys as supervisors because it's it's a confidentiality thing, so it's no one else's business in the workplace why this
Right,
person gets to do XYZ.
right,
But and so other people are looking at like, well, why do they get to do this?
right,
And and that's a fine line you have to walk of being fair and yet understanding to get things, to help that person come in and out. But it's like, I think when a workplace can be understanding, it's kind of like, okay, I get it. And, everyone's just like, but it is a fine line. People
Yeah.
start, questioning, well, why does this person get to do this?
Hmm.
Oh, they must be the pet. And,
Right.
and then
Right.
there starts all that stuff. And it's like,
Hmm.
no, they're, and you can't say, hey, they're just
Right.
going through some stuff.
Right.
So, we're helping getting back on track. And
Right.
so it's just one of those things. It's hard. It really
Right.
is hard.
Right.
It's a fine line for people to walk on.
Yeah.
Even for ourselves, the people needing it, it's like we don't want to look like, hey, I need this little special accommodation, but
Yeah.
until I can get myself, back right and kind of woo again.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think it's wise or important for folks who may have a mental diagnosis? Do you think it's important or it's even wise to share that when hired at an organization so that they can get some type of reasonable accommodation when the time comes?
That one's a hard one
It
because,
is. It is.
when you're seeking employment, you want to shine, you want to show your best attributes, and it's you don't want to say, hey, I got this wrong with me, just FYI, I'm ADHD. Because you worry about, oh God, you know, I don't know if I want to deal with this kind of employee. I'm always gonna have to be on them. I'm always gonna, and that
Yeah.
could prevent you from being hired. I know they say there's laws that, support and, there's no discrimination. It's BS. There is.
Right.
People are
Exactly.
human.
Exactly.
And so, like talking about even that individual that wasn't very understanding of other people's
Yeah.
needs. If I was to approach them during the hiring process and be like, hey, I do have ADHD,
Right.
I do take meds or whatever for it, but, just FYI, I guarantee you they were not fired,
Yeah. That person for
and
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just, it's hard because you, you don't want to claim you have all these disabilities and things because it can render you from being hired.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't like to. I really don't. Actually never have in the hiring process.
Yeah.
Uh, just because I worry about that judgment,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So, how has ADHD, Andrea, affected your relationships with people in general, whether it's your family, uh, friends? Like, how has that affected them in a positive or a negative way?
Um, well, in the positive way, it makes it fun and interesting. You
Yeah.
can be all over the place and you're down for anything. Especially when you're in that good mood. But in the negative aspect, it does make it complicated sometimes because your life is more structurized than someone who doesn't have it.
Mm.
And so you have to kind of always plan out things. And if it doesn't go correctly or on time, if they're running late, you kind of tend to throw kind of like these little fits and kind of be like, well, what happened? You're supposed to be here at this time. But so it can create conflicts, and also like when you're dealing with issues that are important to any type of relationship, friendship, uh, of, you know, parents, friends, lovers. It just, when they're talking and they're, coming at you and stuff, you tend to like almost zone out,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it affects them because they're like, you're not listening, you're being rude, and it just it elevates them, which elevates you. But you have a hard time staying focused, and everything feels more like a nag than, because you've always been nagged your whole life, because it's like,
Right.
well, why can't you do this, why can't you? So it's like that automatic switch in your head that just goes, it's like the elevator music playing in your head, and they're just talking and you're just like,
Yeah.
so it can create a lot of conflict. And it's, you're not trying to be rude, but you've conditioned yourself to kind of almost zone out. And even when you do want to pay attention, you're already thinking about your response and how to respond correctly and control over talking. Because a
Yeah.
lot of people with ADHD do over talk very,
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah.
And because if we don't say what we're thinking right then and there, we'll lose that whole thought and
Yeah.
it's gone. And so it's hard for us because we do come off rude. We
Yeah.
come off inconsiderate, a know it all. And uh, we overtalk a
Yeah.
lot. I am so guilty of that one. And
Yeah.
I don't do it to be rude. It's like if I don't get that thought out, I'm going to lose all my words.
Yeah.
And it's hard to slow yourself down and you keep repeating, like, don't forget to say this, don't forget to say this. And you miss half of the conversation that someone's trying to convey to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, have you had anybody, friends, family members, that you was just very upfront with them and just say, hey, look, you guys know I got this going on, can you guys work with me on this for the sake of our relationship? Because I feel like, if you, whether it's a family or friends, whatever relationship you're in, I feel like if that individual truly are there to love and support you and make it work, then there has to be compromise on their end because of the diagnoses. So have
Right.
you took that extra step to just kind of educate them and let them know what's going on, and was that successful?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think honestly, it's easier to talk to our friends,
Mhm.
our loved ones, anyone we really care about than it is a workplace.
Yeah.
um, so, it's easier for me to, hey, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm ADHD, I'm all over the place, and I'm trying to get my words out before I lose them. I apologize. You know, I'm sorry for coming off like that. I'm sorry your friends think I'm a jerk or I'm rude.
Yeah.
You know me. That's not me, but I get it. They don't know me. That's the hardest part is dealing with the friends of the friends.
Yeah.
The people
Yeah.
close to you, they're absolutely understanding.
Yeah.
They'll work with you. They'll support you. They get you,
Yeah.
and they give you that space to be you.
Yeah.
But it's the third party influences that tend to affect your relationships more than anything
Yes. That
because
is
they don't know you personally.
exactly. Exactly. And it's interesting you said that too, because I have a friend who is of a different race. And this particular individual, their family, they didn't really, in the beginning, they didn't really understand me as a African American male person. I'm just saying person. And they struggle with that because in their country they didn't grow up around Black people, period, none. And so there was some underlying, in my opinion, racism, going on with some of the stuff that he was sharing with me. And so he got to the point, he was like, well, you know you're my friend. Like, it doesn't matter what they think, because I know you as a person, I know you as an individual, and that's all that count. And because
Right.
of his way of thinking, we, obviously we're still good friends today, but I also can't help but think about, what if he was influenced by their thinking? What if he was influenced by some of the negative comments that they made and things like that? And that's
Oh,
kind of,
absolutely.
you know, it would have never worked out. We're like brothers, really good friends. But sometimes third parties do have an effect on people relationship when because to me, it's not up to them to know you, because your relationship is not with them.
Right.
There's a person in the
You're a
middle.
third party.
Right, that's right, third
Your
party.
attachment to the person.
Right, right. And because if it wouldn't be for the person in the middle, there probably wouldn't even be no interaction with us. You know what I'm saying? So the person in the middle's job is to, I feel, is to, set those boundaries and let them know, no, this is not okay. I know this person. They're not like that. And if you can't understand and if you don't agree with it, then you can kick rocks, because I
Right.
know this individual. So I think that's important too.
Absolutely. Like, it I've dealt with the same things where third parties, will knock you left and right. And it does create a lot of conflict where when you do get into, you know, conflicts or disagreements, those things do come out
Yeah.
of, what people are saying about you. And it's just like, well, I don't care if they like me or not.
Right.
And, I only care if you're my friend,
Right.
you
Exactly.
know? And, but everyone wants acceptance. And so those, that other person wants their friends to accept you,
Right.
like you, and get to know you, give you the chance to know you, just like how you know them.
Yeah.
But it's hard when you're dealing with so many different personalities and perspectives on a lot of different things, and it
Yeah.
does get in the way. And I have friends that can I have friends that don't always like everyone I know and whatnot. I'm one of those people. I'm like, I'm your friend till the end. Like, I
Right.
don't care. I accept you as you are.
Right.
And yeah, can I bring around other friends? No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that. Sometimes people's place is their place, and I have to love and accept them where they're at. I can only meet people where they are.
Right.
And so, it's like you have your good time friends and your chill friends. It's like you can't bring the good time friends with the chill friends.
Right.
And so
Right.
some you have to have like that partisan going on. And it sucks because you would love just to bring everyone together, but it doesn't work that way.
Right.
Now, if that person chooses to be influenced by it and goes, this is just too hard, it's too complicated, you know, again, you can only meet that person where they're at and understand. Like, I get it. It can be a lot sometimes.
Yeah.
And I understand that. Like, I can be a lot sometimes.
Right.
And, you know, and I get it. So it's like, I wish you the best. Like, I'm still here. I'm still your friend. But, I get it.
Yeah.
And you kind
Yeah.
of just have to go, it is what it is. And it sucks. It hurts. And, but you learn more about yourself. And I think even with that, like, things you can control, I think you should always continue to work on
That's
and
right.
find new ways. I mean, granted, there are certain things you can never change about yourself. Like, we can't change the color of our skin. We can't change who we are,
That's
but we
right.
can change portions of ourselves and just hope that people are open to receiving the information. And, you know, either they love you or hate you.
Right. Exactly. So, how important, Andrea, is it to seek resources when someone is dealing with ADHD or anything concerning mental health? Why is it important to seek resources?
I think it's absolutely important to seek resources. Even when you think you got it under control, I don't think you should ever stop
Yeah.
trying to grow and learn more about yourself and learning more skills and things to help control it. Like, um, with my ADHD, like I said, I requested to have myself diagnosed, looked at for a learning disability. I found out I don't have a learning disability, but I am ADHD.
Right.
And then, I looked at meds. I looked at how I started doing research on how to give myself better skills to operate in life,
Yeah.
because, it's not just like it just doesn't affect your work life. It affects every aspect.
Right.
And, because I do over talk, I've had to learn to pause for response. Like, I
Right.
always have to tell myself, pause for response. Like, count to three when they're done talking. So, they're done talking.
Right.
And when I'm excited or when I'm nervous, that's the crazy part. It's like I can be super nervous and it will also mimic being super excited. Like, I'll
Yeah.
just go a mile a minute and I'm not focused on the words that are even coming out of my mouth. And
Yeah.
so sometimes I can come off very brash or harsh or insensitive. And I am very sensitive. So it's like, oh, ugh, and I always kick myself. So, you know, you you always have to seek ways to understand yourself more
Yeah.
and learn the skills, learn natural ways to slow it down.
Yeah.
Even like, with like PTSD, I don't think you should just always rely on medicine or doctors to tell you how to deal with it. I think you should also take it into your hands and try to
Yeah.
learn as much as you can, because
Yeah.
you know yourself better than anybody,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and you know what will work for you. You know
Yes.
what won't work for you. But
Yes.
everyone's always so quick to tell you how to deal with
Mm-hmm.
something.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's just like, okay, that's great. I'll try it, but I don't work that way.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
sometimes it is important to learn for yourself and
Mm-hmm.
find those tools, those skills, that knowledge so you can fully understand it. Because when you don't understand it yourself, when you're in the middle of something, you don't realize what's going on. You can't
Right.
control it. You can't
Right.
stop it. If you
Right.
don't understand the emotion that you're having or what you're doing, you're not going to be able to make it any better. You're just going to keep going that same way.
That's right. That's right.
And
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 one,
it affects everything.
yeah, yeah. And one good thing I know about you, you know how to advocate for yourself. You are self-taught, you educate yourself, and you definitely know how to advocate for yourself. And you know what works for Andrea and what doesn't work for Andrea. And you spoke volumes when you said that, because a lot of people do depend on physicians. They depend on psychiatry, which is a good support system, which is can serve as good self-care and things like that.
Absolutely.
But if that support does not work for you, then you have to find what works for you.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of a all hands on deck type of thing. Like,
Yeah.
you do need that. You need to
Yeah.
know where to start, where to look, and and get that clinical support. But also, you have to help, like, understand it for you. I
Yeah.
mean, someone can tell you all day and night, just don't do that. Just
Yeah.
stop that.
Yeah.
But if you don't even understand what's going on with you, how are you going to stop it?
Right, exactly. I remember I told this before years ago, years ago, I went to the doctor for something. And the doctor was trying to tell me it was for something else. I knew for a fact that what they were telling me, what they were saying to me was not true, because
Right.
I know that what was going on with my body, it had nothing to do with that. So it was like, oh, and the doctor was like, oh yeah, people coming here, people out about this all the time, blah blah. I'm telling this doctor, no, we going back and forth, like, and I was so livid. So finally, he was like, well, okay, go get blood tests and all blah 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 blah, which I didn't want to do, only because he wanted me to get the blood test for a specific thing, which I knew was not going on in my body. I knew this was not the
Right.
reason why this was going on. I went and got it. The results came back. He was like, well, you was right, blah, 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 blah. He apologized, but I did tell him, I said, well, you should really listen at your patients a little bit more. I get it. You guys have the education, the experience, but at the same time, people know what's going on with their body, period.
Absolutely. It's
And I had
like,
to shut
I
that
know
down.
exactly. You have to advocate for yourself because
Yeah,
you know you better than anyone. Yeah, they can go off a book and they have more knowledge than us and the human body and all that, or the psyche. But at the same time, you know yourself. Like, sometimes what could be even viewed as depression, and they'll be like, "Oh, you're just depressed." And you're like, "No, I'm not depressed. Like,
right,
I still have that thrive to live.
right,
There's just something else going on. I
right,
don't know what it is. I don't have
right.
the energy. I don't have the drive." And they're
Yeah,
like, "No, you're depressed." And it's like, "No." And then you find out, like, "Oh, I'm low on iron," or something like that. And you're
right,
like, "See, it's something easy. And you're about to put me on a crazy med.
right.
That's,
Exactly.
that wasn't even necessary." And
Right.
it's just like, yeah, it's important that you understand yourself.
Yeah.
And it also helps you, like, also feel a sense of control of yourself too,
Right.
having that knowledge. You don't feel like you're helpless. You don't feel
Yeah.
like you're lost and all that. And it's, people will offer their 2 cents all the time about anything and everything.
Yeah.
And, it's like like even take boundaries for example. Like someone would be like, I need you to respect my boundary and this and that, boundary, boundary, boundary. And you're like, well, I've never been taught or shown how to have boundaries, even for myself. So if I can't have boundaries for myself, how do you expect me to recognize and respect someone else? And
Yeah.
it's like the same way with the mental disorder or ADHD or an ailment of any sort, physical, mental, emotional.
Yeah.
It's just if you don't know it yourself, how are you gonna, you know, respect somebody else's?
Right. Right. Well, Andrea, as I told you before, time goes quick.
Yes, it does.
This is the end of the show. I told you we was gonna jail and tell you once you get to going and get to going. And so thank you so much. I really do for real from the bottom of my heart. Appreciate you coming on
Thank you.
the show, sharing your story, information. I know whoever watched this, it's definitely gonna hit home with them if they, are dealing with, ADHD. But once again, thank you. And I definitely want to have you back on for something else because you
Okay,
definitely,
thank you.
you are definitely a good guest. So once again, thank you. Um,
Thank you so much.
you're welcome. That's it for this edition of Mental Health Matters. If you enjoyed this particular show, if you would like to be a guest on our show, or if you would like a DVD copy of our show, please dial 916 366 4600. Thank you.